Emotions. They are a crazy thing that we experience in each passing day. The common ones of happiness, sadness, a sense of anger and dread, fear, or any other common or uncommon ones, which is such as love, confusion, gloominess, and melancholy. And even some other forms of emotions that we don't understand, or, two NSFW for me to delve into, like depression or horny. There's many ways that we can express our emotions, from the aspect of being a positive piece to someone's day, breaking down into tears and a mixed array of emotions to yourself because you don't have much else to show it, but now putting your love and passion to any form of project that you would want to make. And this comes in the form of art, hobbies, or even making entertainment, especially in the realm of animation. Animation can really show the case of no matter the style and animation, there's a lot of stories and ways that emotions can be shown for the likes of a passion project one chooses to make, a story that is told through a personal experience shown in a unique way, to a sense of creativity and ideas that come to life in many different ways and many different art styles. And this I see a lot with the animation studio that I have a personal love for, as of course with Pixar. We've seen through the years their creative ideas, emotions, and tone that the concept for any story at that studio is often the theme of what if a certain thing had feelings. And we've seen it told through us through the ideas of toys come to life when humans are not around, a robot all alone on a polluted planet that just wants to find love, a small rat that dreams of becoming a chef, a world populated by sentient cars that at first is about racing, but then at one point in the sequel just delves off into whole different things of spy espionage, and then you start to question a lot of stuff and you start seeing some things of whether or not they make any total sense of how does this universe work. But we're not going to delve into that today. We're going to leave that for the possible rewatch of fun down the line. And personal stories, a director's message to his late father, a story of a mother and daughter told to us through a giant red panda, and many more. But in the focus of this review today, we are focusing directly on the middleman, with the idea of said feelings, and ponder the question, what really goes on inside the head of others? And we are talking on the sequel to the award-winning film of emotions with Inside Out 2. Coming in around a decade after the original release in 2015, we return to the mind of a 13 or 14-year-old Riley Anderson and catch up with the emotions inside her head, and also deal with a lot of new changes in the process. And we ask the question of if this follow-up works well or not at all. And in the case, and I think personally, this film does stand on par with the excellent original and may even go above it a little bit. And in all sense, might be my favorite movie of 2024 personally for the moment. Jury's still out on that, but I will be delving into this film with this review here. And just to clarify here, I'm not going to be spoiling the film heavily. I might do with just a slight bit near the end of this review, just for a certain extra topic, but it's more case to give some spoilers of the original and some slight bits in the beginning of the start of this movie. So, but I will warn you down the line. I'll just give my personal perspective on them. And I'm anxious. So, on the basis of story, I'll be giving a bit of some backstory of the plot to the original film before it leads into the new entry, to give an idea of where we are in the narrative, and just case for some that may not have seen it in a while or haven't seen it before. So the original film introduced us to the main emotions of an 11-year-old girl named Riley, that consist of the upbeat joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear. And we get the aspect of how things work inside the mind of memories being displayed in orbs, and based on the color of the orb coinciding with the emotion it is based on, some becoming core memories that make Riley who she is. This soon gets thrown into disarray when her family up and moves from Minnesota all the way to San Francisco, and soon feels a mix of emotions with everything new to deal with. This becomes much more concerning when joy and sadness accidentally get themselves sent out of headquarters by a bit of a confusion and trapped in long-term memory, and must work together, overcome their differences, and get back to HQ to help Riley, who has been the reins of anger, disgust, and fear for the best they can try to, with some form of joy. And the film explores based by the aspects of emotions, how a sense of change can be scary and can come with the added elements of mixed emotions that two can combine to make things a lot to handle. And the way it's presented and shown is great. Visually appealing, it's funny and heartfelt all at the same time, and it stands as one of Pixar's best works. But how does this sequel follow onto the narrative of its emotions inside the girl's head, and what new situations will we find ourselves in now? Well, let me delve into a little bit of what the plot is for this new sequel. The emotions of joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger have been running a successful operation of the mind of Riley, who is now entered into her teenage years. However, things become a lot more messy when the biggest issue facing anyone's life kicks in: puberty. Just as Riley and her friends are heading to a hockey camp weekend that will help in their new school life, this comes to an effect when headquarters becomes into disarray, with dealing some new emotions such as ennui, embarrassment, envy, and the leader of the new group with anxiety, and is about to throw everything into chaos. Of course, it is the only natural progression for the plot of this movie to continue on with Riley becoming older and building on the case that as the child gets over, they will be experiencing some new changes in emotions. Hey, we all went through it. And as a certain song from a certain band emphasizes, I'm still in that awkward phase that we experienced from the ages of 12 to 29. And as known, aging is cringe. Anyway, it makes sense to build on an art of how things will change with anyone, and dealing with the likes of new emotions will become a lot of things to handle at one time and lead to some messy outcomes, and I think that the plot works well for the most case. There's some small issues in the plot that can be a little messy and feel a bit quick to happen, but I think in some sense of things, it works out well in the long term. And in the end, overall, I think the narrative told here is sort of great and strong. So if to give a bit of a story reaction, I'm going to give it around an 8.5 to a 9. Really just some small aspects kind of bring down the point, but that's really it.
Oh, I'm sorry. We wanted to make such a good first impression.
Of course, as I mentioned in the story section above, that with the change of new points in life, like becoming a teen and going through puberty, there is going to be another aspect that comes along with it, and that is of course the addition of new emotions. And we do get a fair few new characters that join the appearances of the old ones as well. I will talk about them in this discussion about what can come from the cast and my opinions on all of them throughout the film. So before we go into the mindscape, let's talk about the focal character these emotions drive, and that is of course with our main girl Riley. A bit of time has passed since the first movie, with her jumping forward around a year after the end of the original movie, with her recently turning 13, or I think she's 14, it's unclear. Heading into puberty and the focus of just Riley through this narrative as she deals with new changes and feelings at a hockey camp weekend, from skills, friendships, future plans, and so much more, that thing can become a lot to really handle. And I think the way they present Riley in the film feels genuine and realistic of how many of us deal with the changes in ourselves in some capacity, and it feels more genuine and not overly over the top as a lot of our projects would probably do. And it's sort of well done on the basis that they did get a group of like teenage girls to come in every few weeks when they were developing the film to kind of build on the aspects of just seeing if this approach with Riley is accurate or not, as well as the other girls in this. And it seems to be the case they made her feel authentic, and it worked out well enough in the end. And I do like the character development they do with Riley in this for the most part, and it actually does feel real and genuine, and I love to see more of her as they grow more, if there's any more films and series to down the line. So let's start with the ray of sunshine in the mind, and we go with our girl Joy. We saw the most development with Joy in the original to learn that other emotions are just as important as she is, and mixing some will also come into play and be a positive force over time. And it is a lesson, and actually keeps into new one as well. You think it would just be like a reverse back to how she was at the beginning of the first movie, but no, they actually build on it, like where most other films would probably do the similar thing, but I think they really do well here. And you learn some important lessons along the way in this new one as well, which I might delve a little bit into the following review. But I always liked Joy as a character, and it was always an emotion that for a long time myself would be the main crutch of the controls in my own head, and it's one that I would strive to do myself, of like, you know, keep things positive and be a joy to people when things can be messy or affected. Probably not for everyone, you know, people kind of hit or miss in opinions and stuff like that, but I do like the development of her character over these two films, and I would love to see her grow more with every new film or show in the series that might come from it in the future. But yeah, great character overall from the original and the follow-up. Next, on an emotion that I've been feeling a little lately with another emotion, is a little precious blue little thing of sadness. Like I mentioned with Joy, both of them went on a journey to get back to headquarters. In the process, Joy learned to respect and appreciate sadness when she felt she was not really needed as much, but learned that all emotions are just as needed as being happy, and they build that stronger bond. Now you think the case incident would just go back to them being a bit odd butt ends with each other, but they actually keep the development from the first movie, and there's like a nice little quote at the beginning of this movie, I can't remember what it was, like I think where I go, you go, kind of thing, which is really sweet. She's not really with the main group for a lot of the film near the end, but by the middle point they do come together help in some form of her past knowledge of, like, you know, the mind and stuff like that. And it's nice to see sadness being seen as usual throughout the film, and there's moments that are quite sweet to see that would have been an afterthought in the original film, but they actually focus on it here. And there's a nice little kind of friendship she has with the new emotion of embarrassment, which I'll talk about later. And I like the use they have with her in this, and would love to see her grow more over time as well. Also, like, so an emotion myself that really that I never really experience unless really pushed to the very far thresholds, but is always ready to blow their top when the moment occurs, is of course with anger. Anger was one of the group of emotions that had to stay and act happy like Joy in the original, with the two other emotions to discuss afterwards, and that result for that ended up with a mixed opinion and to the idea that nearly made Riley run away from home. This new one sees them get more of a focus in this one with the other emotions as they make their way through long term to find something important, and the process help with solutions and giving some fine words of encouragement to keep everyone motivated when things are falling apart or getting messy, which is something I would not think from the concept of anger himself, but in all honesty, it feels really nice to see some emotions may seem one-sided, but they do have some good intentions to them. Anger provides it as well as a few good laughs in the film, in particular with him. I like to continue development of this emotion over time as well. Like all of them. Now, one that kind of feels a bit like an opposite of the newer one, and one that I will all feel at some point in time, is the sense of worry of things we see, and that comes to us in the form of fear himself. Fear is the embodiment of the emotion that will protect us from the things we see, and in the case that we get the idea of so many million possibilities, the likes of anything we see in our daily lives could be super dangerous. When is the mind just overthinking things? The most common thing I always have every day. And I can understand the likes of him trying to be a backup Joy in the original is something that would be stressful for something with a lot of fear. So there's two things I could bring up about this character for the sequel that I have. The first is, of course, that Fear has seen a bit of a voice actor change. It looks like Bill Hader was not back for the sequel, and for some reason I've heard was that it was due to a pay dispute, which also occurred with another character from the first movie that I will talk about in a moment, and was replaced with the actor of Tony Hale, who also already voiced a character in the Pixar universe as the voice of Forky in the fourth Toy Story. And in all sense, he does do a decent job as the voice, and while it is noticeable and a little distracting of the difference, he works well enough for the role and sounds close to the character beforehand. The other point I have about the character is that he is a little bit underused for this film in some sense, where I feel because of anxiety that he gets a little sidelined and just feels like an afterthought in the journey. He kind of just makes a bit of a mockery about the journey in general. He does have his moments for sure in this one, but I feel in some sense he just feels a little sidelined compared to the original, but doesn't know if they serviceable to the narrative. So the last of the original emotions that we'll be delving into, giving some sass and keeping away from the gross things to not look lame, is with the green girl of disgust. Her whole form is making Riley look fashionable, and of course, as I mentioned, to make it out that she does not make her look lame, and was one of the other emotions left in HQ to make her happy when Joy and Sanders got trapped outside in the original. So in this one, as I mentioned, we learn the emotions all taking a trip to the realm of long term and have to obtain something important and also get back and stop Riley from changing massively. She does have her moments in this as well as some funny moments here and there, and you get a bit more of a development for her in this one compared to the first for the most part, with a fair few good scenes of her standing out. This is also the second person to get a voice change in the original, as well as the case towards Mindy Kaling not returning due to the same pay dispute, which I will also emphasize just a bit odd seeing that she does voice another role for Pixar. She plays the character of Val in the Monsters at Work TV series, so I don't see why she would act like this was returning, but not get into it. But I think the voice change of Liza Lapira does a really great job and does a strong performance of the characters that fits her tone well enough. Sure, there's some moments that she feels slightly underused near the end, but I think that she has enough good moments and scenes to make it work overall as a likable character, even when a lot of things disgust her. So let's get into the new emotional baggage that has found themselves taking vacancy in headquarters as well, and we shall start with the big focus one from the marketing and emotion that has been driving my mindset for a really long time, is of course the leader of the new group of emotions, with anxiety. So anxiety is the embodiment of the emotion that will protect us from the things that we cannot see and will plan out for all the possible scenarios in the future that can come from any possible scenario that can happen from an array of mixed emotions that we do not expect. In this, she is seen as unclear if there's been an antagonist for the film, but I think it's not the level of being unredeemable and just as more misunderstood. And I think she is the standout of the film because I feel it really resonated with me that this emotion is always thinking so many steps ahead in planning out everything, and that sometimes things can go wrong and think of so many things at once, and there's the brain. But we'll save that for another point later down the line and make everything messy and put into hyperdrive, but I will not go too deep in this yet. But I will say that besides Joy, anxiety was my favorite edition of this film and probably the standout in general. Just, it's kind of a case like perfect embodiment of anxiety, we'll say. The next emotion of the new ones, the only new male addition to appear from the group, is with the emotion of embarrassment. So the likes of this emotion, of course, is with the likes of we do something awkward or cringy that leads to us getting flustered and sometimes want to curl up and die. Perfectly explains the emotion to a T, and I love this character as well. He's the biggest of all of them in the group. He's such a little softy that means well and just worries so much, don't we all? He does have a good dynamic that he does help as much as he can, and I mentioned briefly earlier, there is a nice dynamic between him and Sadness, that there is a bond, a sense of some connection between them. I love that little dynamic they have. He does not speak much or really at all in this movie, but even with minimal dialogue, he still makes a likable and reasonable place in the cast of growing emotions, and hope to see more of them in the future, and in most cases, just have to look in the mirror for that kind of aspect, but I look forward to seeing more of them in the future. Now, from the biggest to the smallest new emotion to the group that came along with the changes is with the hyper little emotion of envy. Now, envy would be the emotion that has a sense of jealousy that we will want to fit in by copying the qualities of some other people that can come across, and this is evident of wanting to fit in and be like the older girls for Riley to become a part of for when she heads into high school. Now, if there's anything I could say about envy is that they feel a little bit underused in this film in general, as they have some very minimal uses of just making quick decisions for Riley to fit in and being a sort of a voice of reason or sort of a yes girl for anxiety and the plans and ideas. It was the case that they are essentially a shorter version of Disgust, and I'm sure they could have worked out in the case of a lot more of narrative with this one first, but I'm sure they can develop her character more and have her cross paths with Disgust a little more in any future follow-ups, but at the moment they are the most underused in the group, but they could have done better. Ending on the last of the new emotions, the one that's the level of sass and the one that puts pro in procrastination is with the emotion of ennui, which, if you do not know, means the bodem. The likes of this emotion gives off the vibe of just going along with whatever they are involved with little lack of engagement or excitement, and the basis of how they show this emotion in action perfectly captures that tone, and honestly, is such a mood. And if you can appreciate the craft that went into her form, they did not even go up to the level of standing at the console and have her all controlled from her little mobile device. I think the way they present her in this is really well done and has some funny moments present throughout the film. There has been a vocal discourse online saying that she may be the real antagonist of this movie, but it's hard to say. I need to look into it more myself, but overall I think how the user works well in this, and hopefully they will see more of her in some follow-ups down the line. That's my case. So the last of these, I want to give a little brief focus on some minor other characters that make a presence, and while not have much of a big presence, I want to give some minimal thoughts on some. So there is one other emotion that is introduced with the other four at the same time, and that's with the character of nostalgia, of one that will reminisce about the good old days when they've been there for about like 30 seconds and see everything through rose-tinted glasses, as you can see by the design. There is not much to say about her character. She only really appears a small handful of times, but she does have some little funny lines and concepts for someone to have at that age, but I'm sure we will learn more about her down the line. Next, we will focus on Riley's confidants and of her best friends of Bree and Grace. These three have a tight-knit bond with one another and always with each other through it all. And that is until a conflict presents itself at the beginning of the film that changes some things and see a dynamic shift happen. So it's a case with this is that I feel some of it is a little bit sudden, and they specify that something will be happening to them and then just change that quick, that it feels a little bit of a tonal whiplash at the beginning, but it's not far off the ideas of realism to some degree. I think they get underused after the beginning and not make some appearance here and there throughout the film until more near the end of the movie, but so it feels a little messy, but I think for the drama that it can provide, even just a little, makes some sense. It was not a level that annoyed me of this approach. This one I'm going to keep a fair bit brief. On the likes of Riley's parents, they're not really in it that much, as of more of a focus on Riley and her friends at the hockey camp and the emotional turmoil inside her head. They have some moments at the very beginning and the very end, and that's really all we have to show in this, but it's a case of what was said at the beginning still has that strong bond and love between that small fine dynamic, and they haven't been totally ruined. It would be nice to have seen more of them in the film, maybe like a moment between Riley and her parents or something like that on like over the phone or something like that, like helping with some dynamic. Not sure what to do with it and help in some way, but I'm sure they can establish more of it in like a possible third film down the line, but we'll have to see. The last of the characters that I can at least talk about without going too deep into other characters to keep secret and avoiding spoilers is with the cool girl of the camp, and that is with Val. She's seen as the big shot hockey player who had a strong acceptance in the camp as a freshman and is one that sees Riley become acquainted with for helping with the transition to a new school. Now, I do like Val as a character of her being open and approachable and not as some form of a mean girl aura that sees that as a lot of others, you know, they show in other movies of like growing pains. And it would have been nice to see a little bit more of her emotions in some sense of like the whole thing, but there's also a case where I feel there might have been a possible chance that her and Riley could have been some form of romantic feelings that could have been initially built upon, but I guess they'll cover that more in like a bird film, or maybe had been changed because of Disney being Disney and stuff like that kind of thing, which is a similar thing that happened with another Pixar film with some air of tackling puberty with Turning Red, that initially I think I read somewhere that the main lead May and like the skater girl Miriam were going to be a possible thing, but that was the only thing we saw briefly was with the goth girl Mariah with the other goth girl, the party, which, you know, we vibe with. But I can see them tackling the third film or something, but we'll see down the line. But overall, the characters in this are still very charming and fun, and the new additions add some much needed creativity with their inclusion to help bolster the appeal of the characters. Sure, some of the characters feel a little underused or not to the full potential. Some of their problems could have been presented in the feature more, but at the very end of the day, with such a large number of characters to talk on, it was bound to happen in a way that some would get underused. But at the end of the day, the way they are shown works really well, and this emotional baggage is put to use in a very good way. So the score-wise in the characters, I'm looking around an 8 to a 9. That's kind of an area I think of that.
Look at your hair. Oh yeah, not happening.
Now, if there's a case of something I can really give a lot of praise to, it's the likes of the animation and the visual presentation aesthetic of both inside the mind and out in the real world of reality. And I have to give so much praise and applause to the studio of Pixar for really giving such a striking contrast and the wonderful aesthetics of the world present throughout this film and most of their other movies too. Now, if Disney cannot stop firing them and causing much case saying the issues is with them when in reality they have their own problems in particular, that would be great, and let them continue making their love and work and their passion projects, please. Oh, thank you very much. The likes of the animation, of course, is a step up from the original with the likes of detail and sharper visuals. It's still a case that even the original still looks fantastic even about 10 years on. But it really seems the sense of animation goes a long way, particularly inside the Minor Valley with some familiar places from the past like Long Term, Imagination Land and Headquarters all having that appeal, look and flair from the original with some slight new additions to add in. All of one place that I want to bring up is the realm below Headquarters. Not the one where all the pit of all the forgotten memories are, but below that. And this is the place that we know at the beginning of the film as the sense of self realm. The elements that create the core traits of what we strive to be from this beautiful mosaic of bright strands, colorful orbs of memories and a stream of consciousness that form the basis with core memories of who Riley is. And the way it's presented is beautiful. The aspect that sometimes the mind can change with its well presented. Mind can change with it being very well presented, and I may delve a little more into it later, but there's much of it inside the mind that's visually appealing to look at. The same I can say about the outside world and the detail and more realism compared to the colorful, more cartoony world of the mind, with the humans looking real and authentic in design and appeal, contrasting with the lush landscapes of the outdoors of scenic forest, the landscapes of San Francisco, the detail of the hockey campgrounds and the rinks that make it feel close to realism, when all is done in animation and to applaud the efforts of creating two different worlds that could clash in a rough way but actually work well overall. This is also where I bring to the focus of the characters, where it's a case that as they grow older, they get some slight new changes to them with more focused detail between the original and its sequel in terms of, like height and color changes, very slight ones, as well as more of a fuzzy texture being more present on the characters. We all get that fuzzy feeling in the head. This also comes to play with the new emotions as well. I think in all sense, anxiety perfectly captures what I could look like as well as how I look and feel with my messy hair most of the time. I know it's in a bun right now, but literally case, take this off. Embarrassment has that look. It captures the look of the hoodies and pants of being so scared of all the things one just hiding inside oneself from the embarrassment of it all. Ennui's level of bland colors and drooping socks and hair, and envy being small but can pack a lot of jealousy when you don't expect it. This also comes to play with the main girl of Riley looking a little bit different from her original look in the first film. Some aspects, suddenly having huge growth spurt, longer hair, full of braces, and a few spots here and there on her face. As she just hits the cringe era of puberty. Although, as the special someone I watched this film was said that afterwards we hoped they would have had a few more spots on her face to look a little more authentic. And looking upon it now again, I can kind of agree what she emphasized here. Like she got away with it easily. By that point around our age, like 14, 15, face not full of spots and less hairy. But overall, I think it's an excellent piece with all the designs and everything like that, and it's an excellent work in film in general, and how it's presented it works wonders with characters and animation. So presentation wise, I'm gonna give it like a 9.5 to a perfect 10. That's just my end.
You should lock the door and scream that curse word we know. It's a good one.
So we should get on to the writing aspect. And I will agree on the sense that I can appreciate with the likes of this film that they will give their efforts of making dialogue and explaining everything makes sense and have a good flow to it all, feeling like some real flavor text of what the people would talk to each other in the real world would be like, as well as the likes of how the emotions would feel and react in a way of their emotional traits well enough. I think it builds off well with the original with the emotions that they feel, the developing characters from the first to the second. And it's good to see with the Orion they acknowledge some changes from the end of the first movie and keep in some form in the sequel. Granted, with one or two on the emotions on end feels slightly different in some form, but I think in the larger image it is fine and not massively different, that it feels like it's a different character than the emotional present. I think to the sense with these new emotions that they capture the tone and traits of them really well, especially with anxiety of being fast talking, stumbling over their words and being hyper aware all the time just fits their tone so. This also comes the idea of the humor. I do say I enjoyed a fair amount of the visual puns and jokes with this one. One of my favorites that was shown in the second trailer was actually with the sarcasm and how it would work itself in a narrative just for a small little sight gag, but it did crack me up a fair bit then and now, as well as some other aspects that I do not want to spoil, as there's some good jokes and humor in there. Sure, some don't always stick, but I think it has a fair balance of it's connected with Pixar's other strength, and that is of course the emotional aspects, or aspect idea is these motherfuckers are gonna make you cry. These people are gonna make you cry. And I will say there are moments that I did bring up in the extra segment where I felt where I felt that I will not lie to myself that I did get emotional watching this and feeling some moments of resonating with me, and it shows that even after people say that the studio is losing its charm, I don't think that it ever left and is still present and will always provide something great and overall balance of the humor and the heart as well when it needs to be. As Joy puts in the film, let it out. We needed this. I believe that's the quote. I might be misquoting it, but it's close to it. So running wise, I'm going to give it like an 8 to a 9 out of 10.
We'll make you smile.
So this section I'm going to keep brief in the sense of one, I cannot delve too much into it as my knowledge on this section is often and the other is that I didn't have much issues with this section, but I will say the music for this film is still great overall. Taking over the reins in this film as the music department is Andrea Datzman, who worked initially as a prior assistant orchestrator to the first film's composer of Michael Giacchino, making her the first woman to score a Pixar movie, and I have to give it to the music and soundtrack is great, with a fair mix of some new additions to the film that work, and a mix of some old classic tracks in there as well as, you know, the theme of the original of, it's called Bundle of Joy, getting a bit of an updated reprisal mixed in there, and honestly, I think the tone of music fits for moments of action, like Out on the Ring for hockey games, to more slow tones for somber moments, or a few moments for like moments of shock, or even like, you know, jovial moments for moments of like joy and happiness and humor here and there. Sure, like maybe one or two other tracks in the original in there as well, but I think more of the new one, some callbacks to classic works just as well. I won't complain on it too much. So music wise, I'm gonna give it 8 to 9.
Joy, I know you're in there.
So this area is going to have the kind of small spoiler aspect to it, and if you want to skip this section, because in this area I'm not really giving much of a score to, and I'm not going to give a critique to, but rather for this section I want to talk on the aspect of something that really resonated with me in the film, and it comes to the likes of finding oneself and seeing how things like this are portrayed in a way. This section may be a little all over the place with me trying to describe it, but I'm going to try and tell as best I can. So it's a case that we know that one of the major players of this new film has some new emotions, and while some of them are relatable to being present, there is one of course that I want to really get a focus on that I've been heavily acquainted with for a long time, and that's with the character of anxiety. So we all know that case that many people as they grow older will experience anxiety in some form of another, whether it's the fear like, you know, the future, getting a job, taking the next step in life, or some aspects, or many more that will stick around and pop up now and again at points when worries sort of kick in, and sometimes it will linger around and often stay for some other people and won't seem to leave. It shows the case that the filmmakers and director of the film took their inspiration to the research of emotion psychology to really get the tone of fitting what this character is like, now hyperactive, quick, and sometimes a bit uncomfortable they can get when it comes to pushing some emotions to the edge of the mental and social capabilities that nearly pushes them into a downward spiral. The emotion can feel a level of wanting to be prepared for now in the future and worries about every single small detail, similar to the likes of fear, who worries about the likes of things we do see and the reasons of ending up avoiding a complete disaster. Now, there are moments where we see the aspect of her consuming some form of energy and beverages that kind of resonate how different forms of anxiety feels. So a case when she's drinking coffee, it's more a case for like being focused, multiple caffeinated energy drinks at once is when she's feeling stressed or overworking it to try and fix everything, or the likes of when everything falls apart, it's like some herbal tea to try more calm or null the stresses in the process, which helps to perfectly capture that feeling of the different forms of types of anxiety now it feels when having the certain beverages shown that it can feel relatable to aspect. So this is the only time I'm really going to spoil an aspect of the film, but if you've seen already, you probably know about the next section of interest, which is of course the interpretation representing a panic attack, which we have seen a few times in recent memory of animation and done well to an extent, besides one, but I'm not going to talk into that, you can check my review for that one. And this also relates to the element of the sense of self, as an aspect of the film sees anxiety learn about the realm below HQ and sees the likes of changing the one presence that I've shown before they appeared by adding more of her memories into the mix to shape Riley into a new person that may help for her in the future of all possible scenarios. But it will soon be seen that the consequences become apparent soon enough and realize that what she thought she was doing was good will soon spiral out of control to the point where she causes a situation that leads to the creation of a whirlwind of emotions to clutter the control console, moving at breakneck speed to try and fix everything and find a solution of the million possibilities, that it becomes overwhelming to a level that affects the outer world, with Riley taking these effects into the form of a panic attack. How it's shown felt sort of real and well done in its interpretation, similar to how it felt with the likes of the Puss in Boots sequel or the recent Spider-Verse short film. And when it's done right and is shown in the form of someone that has had that experience when they see it, it can make them feel seen and connect more in the project in the process. That's how I felt when I saw this scene play out, and where I felt a lot of the emotional beats. There are aspects in the film that hit the emotions as well, but this one really stuck out to me the most as something that has been with me for a really long time, where I stress and worry about a lot of things that goes on in my life that I'm not going to delve too much into because it's all personal stuff. The effects come in the form of like not really being able to sleep, and at some points when I do sleep, there's moments that make chuck me awake and make me feel how Riley felt in this. Or a case where maybe out in public, just doing simple things like, going for a walk or maybe shopping or maybe at some event or something, where even if things are not so crowded that I feel the sense of just feeling overwhelmed a lot and worried of like something's gonna happen if I don't just keep moving, or just like something the stress and like the shakes come in, which has happened a few times in public over the last few weeks, but sometimes I kept it hidden to not cause too much offense, but sometimes it takes a while. I need to get out there quick. And to the points where being on my own, I'd sort of break down into tears a lot, and it contributes to the worry a lot that I hold in. Sometimes in the case I find ways to explain it in some ways or tell those I trust and care deeply for, but sometimes it's that sense where you have what you want to say all written out in your mind, and sometimes it will come out as is, but a lot of time to me they hit a barrier and it comes out in sections and points and make it a bit messy or not make much sense. It could be in a case of overthinking that you would say you want to say something that you're afraid is going to hurt others, like that I really care about, and it affects a lot of stuff over time and it plays in your head, all the things, and it can affect the form of sense of self to where it feels all over the place and change what it once was, or become lost or not fully replaced, and make things much more grim and lead to a loss or feeling of oneself that I felt in moments that it worries me a lot. I hope some things I hope and wish for can happen and fix, because it's a lot. I'm sure a lot of other people who have seen this beautiful film about emotions and watched this scene in particular may have felt similar things to it themselves, of living with that emotion in their mind. I'm sure that one person I saw with as well may have had some things about the scene themselves, that they might have felt something of their past, but that is one that I felt from it and wanted to be open with it all, of how the scene connected with me and just lay it all out from what I felt, and how all scenes just felt genuine and showed the pain and fear any can go through, but you may not see it from an outside perspective. I just wanted to really resonate, just similar to how I did with Puss in Boots 2. Just so that similar scene as well. So yeah.
No, you're totally right. That decision's not going to haunt us for the rest of our lives at all.
So moving from a more somber and heavy tone, I'm going to give my few points of some issues and critiques that I have with this film. And there's not a lot, but of course, like many media projects, there's always some aspects that can be improved for future installments. But let me give a few small points. So I'll start with story. This is only really down to likes of some story beats, like some elements with the friends, and maybe just a little on the pacing stuff that's not too heavily brought up in the film, but in all sense, it is just some minor critiques that may have been fleshed out a little more to improve the narrative to give some more of a crutch, but the overall rest of the story works well enough as it is. Next up then, I'll give a case with characters. This is just the case of some small issues with one or two characters feeling a little different, maybe just a bit with fear, and some other characters feeling underused or could have benefited more. Mainly this is the case with like Envy or some of the side characters, including ones that I don't want to delve into or mention because I want to keep it from spoilers, but wish they had more of an appearance. But I'm sure if there's more projects from this series is made, then we'll probably see them get developed or fixed in more adventures, so let's hope with that. Presentation, this is just only like a very small nitpick that I may be wrong on in a way, but I would say there could be some very minor pacing issues that some things happen very quickly, like I mentioned, the story section. And with the new emotions introduced before the original groups are suppressed, that given a few extra minutes to it, but I feel maybe I'm overthinking it. The pacing issues are perfectly fine as it is. Next in the case is writing, which is mainly just on some of the aspects of the story not getting fleshed out fully, small elements, and just some jokes feeling a little flat, but it's not too much of a major aspect. And lastly, case is just with music. This is just a small thing, just having maybe one or two more tracks than the original in there, as well as with all the new stuff and the original stuff as well, but it's easy enough to fix on in capacity. But that's all I really have in terms of my points of issues with this film, and it's not too heavy, but that's all I can give for sure of my issues to it all. So let's all wrap it up now in this conclusion.
After all, Riley's 12 now. What could happen?
But overall, while there was a very small concern of a follow-up, it was very quickly dashed by the time the marketing and the release of this film came out, and I think personally I was very anticipated for this movie this year, and it was a much needed film to come out that will appeal to audiences young and old, for fun and colourful for the kids and learning stuff, and for being a reasonably good animated film that can appeal for kids at the same time as another film that came out that feels like they deserve better, to the case where even the likes of adults or those that were young when the original film came out, feeling so much with this new one, and deserves as where it is as my possible film of the year. I might have to check the list, but I think logically this seems to be at the very top for a lot of it. Sure, it has the small nitpicks here and there, but I think that it works itself well enough to really make them not that noticeable and provide a fun, entertaining film that anyone can enjoy. And no matter with all the new emotional baggage that comes with the film, it is unpacked well enough. And if there is a chance that a new entry in this series, like a third movie, comes along, or as I've heard, there is a new TV series coming out either later this year or next year. It's about the Dream production series from the first movie. I would not decline the idea, and I actually think it would work in so many ways. And there's they emphasize it was to 5 to 27 emotions, so we have a lot of other emotions to add into this. And we bring all this emotional baggage, but for now, let's not focus on that for the moment, and let's savor this one for a while as kind of a core memory of a film. But to give the final scores for each area, the story I gave an 8.5 to a 9, the characters I was giving an 8 to a 9, presentation a 9.5 to a 10, writing an 8 to a 9, and music an 8 to a 9, giving a total score out of 50 of 42 to 46 out of 50, or an 84 to a 92%. So around a B plus to a standard A. So well done, Pixar, well done. With all of that, I would like to know your own thoughts on these films, and if your own opinion, if you have seen this movie and the original, do you love this movie? Did you like it enough? Were you disappointed in it? Did you hate it, or were you indifferent about it? Let me know your thoughts and feelings about different things down below in the comments, and we can discuss them there. But I'm gonna leave it there for now, but as always, I hope that you all stay being wonderful people and enjoy this review. And if you enjoyed it, simply like and subscribe, as I'll be uploading more and more of these new videos. And I think by the time this uploads, this will be my 100th video on my channel, so I appreciate the support for the previous 99 videos and this one. So thank you all for watching, and of course you all stay being wonderful people and have a great day every day, and of course take care of yourself because you deserve it. And I'll see you all in the next review or the next video. So take care, keep being you, and take care of yourself, and I'll see you all later.